imminently, and a highway is being built apparently in Tehran, along which he can be greeted when he comes. And the president of Iran went to the place where it is believed by Iranian Shia that the occluded 12th Imam, he's now in occultation.
He's done a well, hasn't he?
He's done a well near Qum. The Iraqi Shia believe that he was under the Golden Dome of Samarra that was recently blown up by Al-Qaeda, by the way. There's a discrepancy. As you'd expect, there's no agreement among the faithful because it's man-made. But now, if he believes this, he believes in the imminent return, and therefore an apocalypse and the coming of universal peace and justice, then it must be in some way contradictory or supererogatory for him to want a nuclear weapon. Who needs this if the Imam is coming? Unless by any chance he thinks that a nuclear exchange, as people wonderfully call it, exchange. Can you imagine a stupider word for saturating civilian populations with thermonuclear material? Exchange. Thanks a lot. Unless by any chance he thinks that might help bring it on. Now, I wouldn't want to take the risk he doesn't think it, though I can't believe he does. And I can't believe he wants to have a nuclear war with Israel because he must know what the outcome will be, let alone with the United States. But is it wise to assume rationality, as it was with the communists? They knew better than to do that. They knew they would all lose. After all, Mr. Rafsanjani, much more cynical and less fundamentalist. I've been in Iran. I've seen some of these people in action. Rafsanjani is considered the pragmatist, not the flaming Mahdi fan, has said publicly, well, in a nuclear exchange, Israel would be destroyed ultimately and forever, whereas the Islamic world would only be badly injured. We would outlive it. Now that's said by the pragmatist. In other words, if you are an elected leader of a Western country, I think you have no right not to take it seriously. You have to assume that that's a possible threat. You cannot dismiss it. Even though that's what Mao Zedong used to say, as I keep reminding people. He used to say that too. He used to terrify the Russians by saying, China would survive a nuclear war, you wouldn't. We have more people. They did say this, whether they believed it or not. Of course, the Chinese have never gone anywhere near a nuclear confrontation. Even in their most ultra-cultural revolution phase, they never went near one, as the Russians did with Cuba.
And of course, he's allegedly.
My conclusion is you see the nuclear weapons are irrational by definition in themselves, because they are useless for anything but genocide and apocalypse, which we don't intend. If it's wrong to do it, it's wrong to prepare for it, etc. But so there may be something about them that drives people nuts. But still, the idea of a nut having a nuke is a little extra alarming in point of surplus value.
And he has allegedly threatened to want to see Israel wiped off the face of the.
Oh, there's no allegation about that. That's
the other translation is that he'd like to see it wiped from the face of history, which I actually can't really see the difference. They both seem equally bad to me.
They are both in whatever translation or rendition. They are just his idiot repetition of a mantra from the Ayatollah Khomeini, whose words cannot be altered, who said that nothing less than the complete extirpation of the Zionist state could be objective. That's just simply true, but that he did say that on several occasions, and that I've heard it regularly repeated in Iranian public meetings and in Hezbollah events in other countries.
Well, you mentioned it a number of times, and it's quite obvious to us that I'll just say this the way you've written it: man created God, God didn't create man, and it seems quite obvious to us. But you've also got. I'd like you to talk a little bit about this. The sort of rejoinder you have to the people that think that God talks directly to them, which is a lot of religious believers, isn't it?
Yes, I mean, if somebody says to me, not that Jesus is my best friend, but say, well, I'll give you an example. I have a book on my shelf from Bishop Hugh Montefiore, who he died recently, the Bishop of Birmingham, which by the way is the first line of a limerick. And before that, when I first met him, was the rector or vicar of Great St Mary's Church in Cambridge, a very, very distinguished churchman, and good. he wrote A Vindication of Belief as a Christian. He's a convert from Judaism. He says that when he was one of the 2 or 3 Jewish boys at his public school, I forget which school it was, that Jesus of Nazareth entered his study one day and persuaded him to stop being a Jew and accept the path.
That's nice.
And it can certainly be said of Hugh, I'm taking the case that it's strongest, I think. It can certainly be said of Hugh Montefiore that the rest of his life he acted as if that had happened to him. And I think it did happen to him. I just don't think it happened.
So he hallucinated something, or something along those lines.
That's not quite a hallucination. I think for him it was completely real. He just can't make it real for me. He can never persuade me it happened.
Mm-hmm.
But he can persuade me that it happened to him.
Yeah.
If you follow me. I don't doubt all those who've seen UFOs or ghosts either. I don't think that though some of them are undoubtedly fraudulent or deranged, as we would customarily say deranged, as we tend to look askance at those who say, I've been hearing a lot of voices lately. Prophecy, a biblical study, so a scriptural study, is impossible if you don't credit people who say that things will reveal to them in dreams, or by what appear to be epileptic episodes. Mm-hmm. There's a very strong case for saying that St. Paul had an epileptic fit. Many good students of the subject, looking at the descriptions we have of what happened to Muhammad when he had his revelations, say this is a description of an epileptic. Other prophets too. Sure, but it doesn't mean it's any... Who's to say those are not really events in the material world? Marx said if an idea takes hold of masses, it becomes a material force.
Mm-hmm.
If something is widely enough believed, it is.
It is.
It is the case, as it were.
Absolutely.
So that's what I think. I therefore think it would be... I don't say that Richard Dawkins does say this, but for people like him to say that all of this is simply deluded piffle is not untrue, but is a little bit reductionist.
But you've also called the idea that a person could know the will of God to have God. You've also called that.
But that's impossible by definition. I mean, that's quite different from saying, Jesus of Nazareth came to me. He doesn't say, if Jesus of Nazareth said, he also told me where the treasure was buried, and there it all was. And no, he doesn't say that. And to say, no, I know what God intends, is a much larger step. To say, I know what God wants us to eat, I know what position he wants us to have sex. And so, no human being could possibly know that. So you start the argument, it seems to me, by eliminating those who claim to know what they have to conceive cannot be known by definition, because if it can be known by them, where's the authority of God? Morally or naturally. There's no... If it can be done by humans, then they're only carrying out his orders, then it's banal. That's self-refuting. That's easy. But that gives me no problem at all. Deciding whether or not there are people genuinely of faith willing to sacrifice their lives for what they think of as a glimpse of the divine, I'm not so sure that I could say that they're making it up.
Mm-hmm.
Though I'm absolutely sure that they couldn't have such an experience, and that their having one, even if they're sitting right next to me, is as meaningless to me as if they're having a stroke. And they cannot possibly hope to tell me that it's meaningful to me what's happening now. And they mustn't try. And under no circumstances are they to be given the education of my children, or to conduct their ceremonies on my tax money. But that Hugh Montefiore met Jesus in his study at Winchester is, as far as I know, as true as anything I've ever said. By the way, it had one particularly strong effect. It left the only other Jewish boy in the school as the only Jewish boy. Apparently never forgave him. Thanks a lot. Until Jesus came to your study, mate. At least there were 2 of us. Now I'm the only year. This whole fucking... this whole shop. But he was a nice man, and his book, though it's ludicrous, I find, is not vile or fraudulent or demagogic. He just says it must be true because conditions for life on Earth are ideal. It's created so as to support life. And I said, well, what about Mars, mate? It's not very far away. Every other rock in the system is either too fucking hot or too fucking cold, as is the case with large bits of the Earth itself. I mean, we're on a climatic knife edge, as we now all know. Some design, eh? Yeah.
So unless really we're talking about some Hanoverian aristocrat building follies, then there is no case for it.
Not really, no. And no, good. It's a good analogy, but also it also shows